welcome to the Women's Mortgage Network podcast. I'm very excited today to be interviewing Allison Thenhaus. Welcome, Allison. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I think if you don't mind, let's just dive right into it. I think what's so special from our previous conversations is just how unique your background is, how you got into the mortgage industry, how you persevered through some really amazing, incredible things. So why don't we just kick off there? Take us back to, I guess, what you were doing before the mortgage industry and how you kind of stumbled into the mortgage industry.
Yeah. So in my 20s, I was in sales, but in advertising. I had gone to school at Bucknell University in Pennsylvania, and I had gotten into kind of a bad accident. I was hit by an uninsured motorist, which resulted in a spinal injury and a brain injury. And so my whole life kind of took a huge detour overnight. I couldn't go to work. And, my husband and I were just like starting out our careers at that age, and kind of just went unplanned for the next 10 years. I had 6 spinal surgeries, did a lot of rehab for the brain injury in the first year. And so because of that, my business, I couldn't really work for someone 9 to 5. So I lost that job, and I had always been into horses. And so picked up my own business working for myself, selling equestrian goods online across a couple different platforms. And that really was kind of all I could do as I was going through that stage of my life, because I was kind of a unpredictable worker, where I would have bad days and good days, or had to have the surgeries and recover. And once kind of that all ended in my life, my husband came to me and was like, if that didn't happen, what would you do now? If you could start over, because we definitely found in the equestrian business and retail, that's when Amazon was really kind of eating up the market, where they would kind of have sellers come in and then figure out what would do well, and then they would take it on themselves to make the lion's share. And it became very apparent once they did that, they were going to slim down the margins, and it was going to be really hard to continue in that business and very hard to scale, just because of how much goods you have to carry at any one time. And I told them I really don't want to start over again. I mean, I had amassed 13,000 clients across the world, so I didn't want to do that all again, because I had worked really hard to do that. And I knew I wanted to be in the service industry, something that didn't have, a huge inventory that was aging, that if anything was happening, I was just kind of wasting my time, but not actual, spending of money. And so we had kind of come up with that either I would go into real estate or into mortgages. And because I had a daughter at that time and still wanted to be a mom and spend a lot of time with my family, that kind of pushed me into mortgages. And I've always been really good with math and puzzles. And so when we got into it, it kind of feels more like a whim even getting into it. And then once I was there, it was like, how did I not end up here to begin with? Like, I really think every part of your life kind of puts you right where you need to be, even if it's kind of unconventional how you get there.
Oh, for sure. I think it's funny. We all it's not like you go to college or play with mortgage blocks and you end up in the industry. We all just kind of fall into it. What I think is so cool about your background is that you always had that entrepreneurial spirit, which has, kind of helped and led you there. And then also just the people aspect, right? Of connecting, being relatable. And I feel like you're doing what you're passionate about, right? So that's really cool. Was there a moment early on where you realized I can actually really build something here in the mortgage industry? When did that really register from that huge, transition from one industry to another, where you're like, wow, there's something going on here. I'm going to be really successful in this.
I think it was apparent pretty much instantly. I was very successful in the other industry, but you're selling $25 at a time to be really successful. So I think the economies of scale here were just a lot easier. I did dip back into a client base, so I wasn't like some people starting from scratch, making those clients. And my whole life is kind of centered around that client base, because it's the equestrian industry. Well, now I'm in the mortgage industry, but all my clients are in the equestrian industry. A lot of my real estate agents are in that. My credit repair person is in that. I mean, most people that I have met are in that. So you didn't really have to start over. And whenever I give advice to people, it's don't redefine you. Whatever you're into, lean into that and kind of take advantage of that. And I went and worked for a very small shop for my first year. And I worked for this guy because he was super creative. And I was like, what's your best year? And he was like, oh, like 16 million. It was a very small shop. And I
Yeah.
told him, well, great. My first year goal is 12 million. And he was like, good luck with that.
Yeah.
And I did 12 million my first year there. I think like anytime you put your mind to something, I mean, the industry I was in before, because we were selling online, but I was also going to horse shows. I mean, it was a slog. It was hard work. So for me, this was so much easier to
Yeah.
do all of that. You definitely have to be a go-getter and, you know, have self-management of your time and want to improve all of that, but it made it very, very easy. And then I went to an AIME fuse, and just by happenstance, like things have always kind of worked out in my life. And I think everything happens for a reason. I met Ron Tempko, and he did the assumed close on me. He's like, you need to come work for me. You're going to work for me. And then I remember him, I didn't even give him an answer. I'm like, how do you even know? You don't know me. Salespeople are kind of full of crap. Like,
Yeah.
what if I'm selling you right now? And he's like, I just know, like, I've met a lot of people. I just have the utmost faith in you. You're going to be very successful. You're going to come work for me. And he took me over to Matt Ishbia from UWM and did the assume close, was like, she's going to be working for me. And I can appreciate, you know, the sales process. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, that's amazing. And I went to work for him. And I mean, I increased my business in like 2 years, I don't know, 500%. I mean, I've never looked back. It was absolutely the right move.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. What do you think just going back to, you know, obviously the equestrian sales and things like that, like connecting, leveraging your network, right, to build your business. I think that experience definitely like helped, right, with that network and on building that client base and looking into I mean, as women, we're relatable, we're connectors. So that definitely, I'm sure, like helped. But you also went through something that like most people can't even like fully understand, right? With your accident. Can you share a little bit about like how maybe that also experience helps change maybe your approach in like your work and relationships today? Because I'm sure it impacted, you know, the equestrian part, but then also today too, right? It must have really had to have impacted certain things. So
I think it's made me better in business in that, you know, the clients that I work with, I really don't ever treat it as like one and done. You know, our business might be a little bit different. We don't buy leads. You know, the clients, I want to create lifelong relationships with them. I want to figure out what their goals and dreams are. I want to be an advisor to them, not just throw up the greatest, you know, little clip it about whatever we can get people to come to us on the newest thing that's being offered. You know, we really want to help them and work with their financial planners to use this as part of their financial goals, or understand, are they coming to us with problems in their life that we need to solve? And I think because I went through something so horrible at a very young age, when I didn't really have any skills or tools to be able to cope with something like that, and you're just kind of thrown into it, you learn a little bit more of the humanity side of things. And I think you create these deeper connections and realize that, yeah, sure, we could be a loan officer and just do loans, or we can impact people, you know, even simply from, if you take an application of someone that can't be a homeowner right now, a lot of times they don't know how to be a homeowner. We're just not like, oh, sorry, we can't do that. We're going to help them with the whole plan to get to their goals. I mean, that's our job, is to share that information that maybe they haven't accumulated over their life yet, to really impact people's lives. And I can tell you probably one of the most impactful stories I have is a reverse mortgage that we did for this guy, Steven, in Florida. And it was very challenging because he lived in a condo, he owned it outright, but during COVID, when things were more expensive because he's retired, he really didn't have money to live, and his prices went up. He ran up his credit cards, and really his only option was to move because he's retired. He has no income. And of course, the condo association in Florida was not FHA approved, so we had to figure out some specialty product for him. But I remember doing it. By the time he got to us, he was like in a dire situation. And so we're scrambling as fast as we can to help him. And I remember him telling me a story that he like literally went through his house to get all of his change so that he could go buy 2 loaves of bread and a jar of peanut butter so he could eat for like 2 weeks as we're like trying to scramble to
Oh
close.
my goodness.
And I think, that's like the humanity of it, where,
Mhm.
especially because I've been through something so horrible, you really feel for these people that they're human beings. I think a lot in this industry, like everybody forgets, like us as loan officers are human beings. The people that are working at the bank are human beings. You
Yep.
just get so used to like everything being instantaneous, and you kind of forget the humanity and the human connection of that. That we're all just trying to like figure stuff out and live our lives. And I think, it was a very small loan. But that whole moment sticks with me and well for the rest of my
Yeah.
life, because when we finally did that, he went out and bought himself like a chicken or rotisserie chicken and mashed potatoes. And to him, that was like totally amazing, and the fact that
Yeah.
he changed his life like that instead of having to sell his place and who knows where he would have ended up.
Yeah.
I mean, those
Well,
that stick with you.
yeah, and it helps shape us as we like, continue to build in our careers and work with more clients. And you're right. I think sometimes so many people are stuck on how many transactions, what was my volume, and that's all exciting to celebrate. But it's really exciting to show that's how many families or people that I helped make the biggest purchase of their life, right? And maybe the only big purchase of their entire life, right? And you also touched on, you know, being relatable, having those deeper conversations and relating. Are there certain things that you do in your business to contribute to help with that repeat business?
I think we try to reach out and stay in contact with all those people. I mean, my ultimate goal by creating that connection is that, we're not just doing one loan for them, we're doing
Mhm.
every loan that they ever do throughout their lifetime. And then as they have children or people that they know, that they're going to refer us to those people.
Yep.
It's a very powerful way to build your business. It seems that when you buy leads, those are kind of one hit wonders. People are really shopping rate. They're not shopping the connection, all the other information that we can provide besides just being transactional brokers. And, I think that that's a harder way to really grow your business. This kind of grows like a spider web because all these people that you've done such great things for are talking about you. So you're not constantly going out to get the next connection. You're like building this empire of connections.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. So what I love about you today on this podcast is that you're traveling with your
Yeah.
daughter for a show. I want to segue into what it's like to be not only just like a working mom, but a high performer, right? Top
Yeah.
producer, working mom. And just, you've built a successful business while being a mom. But what does that really look like behind the scenes? Like, what sort of things do you do to have that way, that work life balance and be present in both your business and with your daughter?
Yeah. I think there are very few jobs in America where you can do that. I spend 70 days a year. That's what we did last year on the road with my daughter. We can work from absolutely anywhere. I was obviously just running up here because my daughter's literally at a horse show in this hotel in Las Vegas down in the basement. I flew in here at 12:30 this morning. She was up at 5 getting ready. I was down there on my phone. But then when she comes in the arena, I drop everything and really focus on her. I mean, I definitely feel blessed to be able to have spent, my daughter's 14 years old now, so much time with her over the years compared to if I had a 9 to 5 job
Mhm.
in an office. And, you know, I am a bit competitive. Maybe that's where she gets this from. I want to be very successful. I think it's very hard to have both without really compromising one without the other. And that's why I feel very thankful that I found my way into this industry, because I don't think that there's any other way where we could give full attention to clients. I mean, we have very good operational processes so that we can do all of this without our clients ever knowing that I'm out here at a horse show, spending
Yes.
all this time with my daughter, driving 36 hours to Florida with horses. We kind of marry all that together, but I have an amazing relationship with my daughter. We spend so much time together. That's time that you're never going to get back. And I think now, especially for a lot of women, you know, you're kind of expected to do really well in your career, but also be that A+ stay at home mom, which it's very hard to marry the two together. Where not that long ago for men, okay, you're expected to be the breadwinner and go do a very good job, but you have someone at home completely like supporting all the family stuff. And I think I've been very fortunate to be able to marry both of this and just spend so much time with her.
That's great. That's great. And to your point, right? Like that flexibility, but I'm sure there's also that understanding, right? It sounds like your daughter is following in your footsteps of being competitive, and having that drive and everything, which is great. Are there any other like non-negotiables for both like business and personal life that you have had to put in place? It sounds like, you know, a key one is I put down my phone, I'm present, you know, during her shows. What does that look like there too?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to work out kind of what works for your family and what processes you're going to put in place, because we are in a society and business right now where they do expect everything to be instantaneous. If they can't get a hold of you in an hour, that's going to be a problem. You know, I have team members that can take over that stuff if I am away for a little bit, you know, because I have been doing this for 7 years now. It kind of just integrates into our lives where that's just a part of it. If I'm walking down to the arena, I might be taking a call, but then I'm putting it on mute and completely engaged in the next step. And really, if you asked our clients, unless they're on Facebook watching my daughter ride, they wouldn't ever know that that's what was happening.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into my next topic of just as women, we tend to love like control. We tend to love to own our process. It's really hard, whether it's in our personal life or even in our business, to relinquish any type of control, right? It sounds like recently you've made a big shift in your business to, you know, not only, you know, enable you to have some of, you know, more freedom, but also to really partner and be in a place where you can actually scale your business more. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that experience and some things that you've implemented to scale and grow and give back a little bit your time?
So I did just hire, I guess it's been 90 days ago now, an LO that originally I mentor a lot of LOs. So I have a team underneath me as well that during the hard times went and worked for a builder. And I kind of reached capacity. I mean, I was super busy. I'm a control freak for sure. We have good operations in place, but you can only do so much. When you reach that point where you can't do anymore to make the next step, a lot of people I don't think talk about that. You're either meeting with high performers that already have a complete team, you know, they've made enough money to be able to hire all those people, but a lot of people don't talk about how to bridge that gap between what are you capped out at. I'm capped out during COVID at doing 115 loans by myself. That's a cap of what I can do, and still have a family life, some type of it. And so in this market, it's even harder. You know, a lot of our clients aren't all W-2. They're more complicated. They're needing more hand holding. They're distracted. We're having to follow up more. So what it looks like now is different. And I think sometimes you can't just hold on to that. You need to grow. And so this girl was really good. I trained her, so I knew what I was getting myself into. I think it's very important when you hire someone to really be successful and to grow, you have to hire the right person. And the right person is usually going to be pretty expensive. And I think the next fear factor of that is when you do that, you know, do you have processes in place where they're going to complement the things that are my weaknesses? Are they going to be their strengths? It has to be someone that you're going to trust with a similar work ethic to all of that. But you also have to get over the fear factor of I'm taking on this expense as a business owner. Am I going to be able to be confident enough in myself? Like the numbers all look like they're there. I'm spending 20% of my time selling, 80% of the time stuck in operations dealing with loans on the back end. If we take that away, it's reasonable to think, you know, we'll be able to easily increase our business by 50%. I was nervous about it. We ran numbers in every different scenario. Really, I have to give credit to Alan Baydoun and Danny Morogi from UWM because they're very successful. I went and got advice from very successful people, and how did you do it? I was really honest with myself that there was a fear factor of relying on myself, because there's nothing to hide behind in sales. It's all you. And they really encouraged me to do that. And I hired her, and I think there was a little fear factor for her because she was going from salary to salary plus commission, and all of that. And I remember her starting, and a week later, both of us talked, and we were like, why were we both so scared? I mean, my numbers have increased by 400%. My only regret is that I didn't do it years ago.
Yeah.
And rely on myself. It definitely makes a difference. She's amazing. If I ask her if she's done something, she already did it a day ago. It's like somehow she's in my brain doing that. And it's changing both of our lives. I mean, she's going to make a better living than she ever has before in her life. We actually just got back from Tennessee together, in which we closed an entire office of 27 real estate agents in one trip. It's allowed us both to think a lot bigger. And I think, it gives you the courage that, I knew I could do it, but when push came to shove, like, we really did do it, and it's already paying off.
Yeah. It sounds like you did your due diligence, like, going into this move, and it wasn't an easy decision, and it sounds like it's working out really well. For other women that are kind of battling that today of how do I, feel comfortable with, today I'm doing everything and I just like having that control. What would be some advice or things that you learned from doing that due diligence that you would pass on to them that might be in your shoes a little over 90 days ago?
I think my operational process, if you have a process that you stick to, we use Arrive religiously. A lot of people use a lot of other things all together. I figured out pretty quickly, the more things that I had to get into, it took more time, and it made me a lot less efficient, plus a lot more expensive. So we actually do everything in Arrive. We use it as a CRM. As soon as I take any sort of file in the sales process, I'm writing notes so that by the time my processors get in later, they can look at everything. They know exactly where we're at, how we got to that. We use it in every ability of automation. That's made us a lot more streamlined, but I have such a good process that when we could bring someone else in and train them on that process, really I could give up control because the process is so automated that as long as we follow all that and the processors follow all of that, that we're giving the same experience. And that really is the hard part about giving up control, is when that experience level for your clients drops. But the better your process is, the better that's going to be. I'm in the women's book club with Julie Yarborough. She had us read The Gap and the Gain. It talks a lot about if you improve your processes by 1% a month, by the end of the year, that's 12%. If that increases your business by 12%, I mean, that's a huge growth factor to doing that. And I think just, looking at everything time-wise, how do we give clients the same exact experience? When you're confident in that, it's easier to give up control. Because I definitely, before this, was one of those people that is a control freak. I mean, I think most women are used to juggling all these things between their husbands and their families and everything. And they're the ones that are always making sure the ball doesn't drop. So it's hard to give that up and trust that someone else is going to do that. But you're as good as your processes are. And, a lot of times we get loans from out of state, from other LOs that are using the same system and get it. And it's like, wow, this is a complete mess. And that's not how we operate. We do everything up front. I mean, we're using ADI AI now that's integrated into Arrive. So it's pre-underwriting our files. So all the LOXs, the things you need to source. We get that all up front, because then we're reducing the risk factor of any unknown when we're writing that pre-qualification level, that we know everything from start to finish. That allows you to give up control because you're taking out any risk. The fear of giving up control is the risk of things going wrong. So the better those processes are, you'll just be less fearful about that, and it's much easier to give it up.
Oh, for sure. Now, it's unique in your situation as well that you were able to train, her, and so you knew who you were adding to your team. For those that may not know, and they're just kind of going through that process of interviewing things, what would be some of the top skills or things that you would recommend that they're not screening for, but they're just, as they're interviewing and trying to find that right fit for their team? What are some of those top things that they should be looking for?
I think the first thing is to make a list of what you're strongest at and what you're weakest at. My weakness is being probably as organized as I could because I did such a high volume of business. And so much of that was in my head, or like I can remember people's last names. I can't remember their first names. If you start talking about the deal, I can remember that. But otherwise I would have to get into my notes and stuff. So for me, I needed someone that was more organized than what I was. You know, whatever your weaknesses are, I think you really have to be honest with yourself of what that is, because you want people that complement you.
Yeah.
So that you guys are kind of the yin and the yang together. Also, I think having the same client-centric mentality. You know, the person I had hired, because the people are more important to me than the money that we make off of this. I believe that if we service the clients and do a good job and you don't focus on that, you'll make a good living because of that. Everybody has a different mentality of what that looks like. I think it's important to partner with the same person with the same ideals, because they're going to treat your clients the same exact way, right? I don't care whether it's a $50,000 loan or a $2 million loan. I want those clients to get the same exact experience. And I think if you don't pick someone that has similar mentality to you, and then I think just a similar work ethic, you know, for me, the clients are more important. If I need to stay up till 2 a.m. to get something done, that's what's going to happen. You know, if we're having problems with the closer and everybody needs to drop everything and go to that file to make that happen, you know, I want someone with that same mentality that if we're not doing everything we can and taking seriously that there's earnest money on the line, that's just not going to work for my system. And I need to have someone the same way. That's not like, well, it's 5 o'clock. That's not my job, or title's not doing their job, so I'm just going to let them do it because that's not my job. That's not the way we feel. Like, we're going to have to unfortunately fill in the gaps. You know, we're ultimately accountable to this, to the client. So I think you have to find someone with, you know, similar work ethic, similar mentality with the clients, but then probably the opposite skill set that you have to complement you.
That's a great way to look at it. And I mean, to your point, right? Like, you're trusting them with your clients, but someone that's really aligning with your brand and your voice, right? Because you want them to be able to step in and handle those things the way that you would as well. So that's very encouraging.
I think probably the only other thing I would add to that was really important in bringing this person over. We all know when we hit refi booms, we're working crazy hours that we're taking away from our family. I did think that it was very important that the person I hired, if I'm expecting them to have the same mentality, that we are hitching our wagons together. And part of that, you know, I paid her a salary so that she was confident in coming over, but I pay her a split on everything we do, because I wanted to make sure that when we're in the thick of it and we're hunting that business and sacrificing time from sleep, family, or whatever, that she's also having a benefit. I think it's very hard if you're expecting to pay someone hourly and then sacrifice like you do. I think there has to be kind of that compliment that you both are going to be very successful by working together and devoting that time, because there is always a sacrifice with it.
Yeah, that's so meaningful, and you're truly defining like a partnership. And not everyone, aligns that way when they're going their team. And it sounds like it's working, and you guys are able to scale. And I know you threw out some lower percentages, but like earlier on of just on average, what, adding those, additional, people to help. But it sounds like you guys are going to be way over 50% of increasing.
So it's going to be better than we both thought. So
yeah, that's good. That's rewarding. So I guess just, with everything you've, navigated, what are some of, like, what are you most proud of that people might not see or know?
Well, I think most importantly, I'm most proud of being a mom, to my daughter. I'm most proud of everything that I went through and the things that I learned that not everybody gets the opportunity to learn when bad things happen to you. To be able to share that perspective with my daughter. I mean, she's very young, but very aware of others. I don't think, she would have that gift if everything didn't happen the way that it did.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Okay. And then, you've kind of hit your hardest season, right? what advice would you give to women that might be in their hardest season today, right? Whether, it is something traumatic that they're going through, or just being a new mom and balancing life, or they just entered the mortgage industry and they're struggling, as they're in, challenging times, what would be your advice to them?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing I've found about women is we're hypercritical of ourselves. We probably give ourselves the least amount of grace, and that life isn't just this continuous line to get where you're going. There are a lot of ups and downs, but the overall trajectory is up. And I've definitely found in my life, when things are the hardest, usually that's when you keep holding on to maybe something that's not working, and maybe that's life's way of being like, that's not the path you really need to be on. You need to be on this other path. And I've learned quicker through my lifetime to pivot when things are getting really hard, that there might not just be a solution 1, 2, maybe you're not looking at a solution 3, and maybe that's where you need to go to have really, really good things happen. And it seems like when you pay more attention to that, kind of the stars align and things get easier and easier. So one thing that I think, you might see is like the worst thing ever happening. If that didn't happen to me, I would never be where I am now. Like all those things had to happen for this to line up. So I think to not look at it as like, my life is over, this is catastrophic. Maybe it's teaching you something that's going to make you absolutely brilliant later, and have the capacity to do something that you currently did that's going to turn into be your superpower instead of your Achilles heel.
Oh, for sure. For sure. What does success mean to you today, now that you've gone through everything and, you just, you relinquish some control, you're growing your business. You said it earlier, it's not just about the transactions and volume, it's about the people that you're helping, but how are you defining success? Does that look any different?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's obviously some success in being able to provide, a life for my daughter, to be able to have this opportunity that very few kids would be able to have. It makes me very happy that she has a great work ethic. I've taken down some of the obstacles that maybe other kids have had to be able to do this, but we want her to be completely motivated on her own. So watching all of that happen, I'd say right now, more the thing that provides me the most amount of happiness is not looking where I rank at C2 every day, which I do because I'm competitive, but watching the employee and the partner that I brought over, watching it change her life, that probably has given me more satisfaction than any amount of money in my bank account or what my ranking is. I think just watching this industry change people's lives for the good, and how you can work together and really appreciate each other to achieve so much more.
That's incredible. Not everyone has that mentality in this industry. We know how many egos are in this industry. So that's so powerful. And it just goes to show why you are successful in this industry, with the relationships and how much passion and care you have for the people that you help. So Allison, thank you so much for joining us today on the Women's Mortgage Network podcast. Allison said it earlier on this podcast. We definitely want to see everyone at Fuse as well. That's a very impactful event. You may even find your next job like Allison did, that was life-changing right in her career. So really appreciate your time today, and thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you.